Journalists, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center continues our working day. Thank you for watching us online, being here. And our topic today of the briefing is joint visit by the chairs of the Foreign Affairs Committees of Germany, France and Poland. Our speakers are Miss Elisabeth Guigou, Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Affairs on the French National Assembly, Mr. Norbert Röttgen, Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the German Bundestag, and Mr. Grzegorz, Schetyna, Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Affairs on the Polish Sejm.
Thank you very much for attending our press conference. We are happy to have you with us in order to make some brief remarks to start. Just a few minutes, all three of us, and then, of course, we are ready to answer your questions. We are Elisabeth Guigou, the chairwoman of the French Committee for Foreign Affairs, Grzegorz Schetyna, the chairman of the Polish Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'm Norbert Röttgen. I'm the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the German Parliament, the German Federal Parliament. We are here in the so-called Weimar Triangle for the second time. Perhaps individually we have been here in Kiev also. In the meantime, we are here for the second time. We want to express sustaining European interest and support for Ukraine. We want to demonstrate that this is not only a matter for Poland or for France or for Germany, but that this is a matter of European importance. We are very interested and committed to the future of Ukraine, but we also are committed to the future of Europe. And we strongly believe that the future of Ukraine is very much tantamount to the future of Europe, because it is about the rule of law, the rule to determine your own fate as a state, and for that reason we are determined to continue our support for the democratic future of Ukraine. But of course, we have also discussed and are going to discuss with the Prime Minister, and now just we have talked to our colleague, the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, about critical developments we have seen, particularly in the last months here in Ukraine. We are convinced that a convincing fight against corruption is absolutely vital for the future of Ukraine. And we see that there is much to do, that there is also a certain degree of disappointment, not only with regard to legislation, but even more to the implementation of convincing steps taken by the government and by the leadership of this country, which demonstrate that there is a determination and will to really fight convincingly corruption. There has to be done more, much more, in order to sustain public support. And on the other side, there is the part of the Minsk agreement, which we see as the part, and we do not see any alternative to come to a way to stabilize the region, to come to a peaceful development. And we see the necessity to live up to the requirements of this agreement. Of course, my personal view, I think we share all this view, is this crisis has started with the Russian aggression, by the Russian deployment of military force, going beyond its own borders into Ukraine. This is the main and root cause for the conflict we have, but we consider it to be very vital and necessary that also Ukraine lives up to its responsibilities and obligations, and at least in order to avoid that also Ukraine is blamed for not convincingly fulfilling the requirements. We want Ukraine to keep support by the European Union, by the Western camp, because this is vital, and for this Ukraine may not allow doubts that Ukraine is also willing to fulfill obligations, and that Ukraine, as I mentioned before, is also determined to fight corruption. These are the main subjects of our talks today. We are here for the second time and surely not for the last time. Thank you so much. So I will now pass the micro to Grzegorz or to Elisabeth or to you, to Grzegorz.
A couple words, sorry. Thank you for this introducing, because we had 5 minutes to describe the problem, and Norbert said 100%. For us, it's important situation, important visit, as it was before. We were two years ago in April 2014. It was another situation, but the problems were the same. We are here after the substitutes and change in the Ukrainian government. It's a new prime minister. We will be meeting with him tonight, and it's important that Ukraine starts to open a new chapter of this difficult reality. We talk about the Eastern relations, about the Donbass, about the ceasefire, also about the Nadia Savchenko issue, about their situation, and about our activities to arrange freedom for her. It's important that we are the part of the Weimar Triangle, Weimar format. Is very interesting because we work out together very intensively for years. And it's important that our opinion about the situation, about the Eastern problems, Eastern policy, European Eastern policy is very is common. So it's important that, and we tried to underline that our opinion, our conclusions about this visit, I hope so, because we will finish afternoon, we will have the same opinion about it. It's important to describe the European opinion about the Ukrainian issue, about Eastern issue, about very difficult relations between Russia and EU, and especially between Russia and Ukraine. Thank you for your hospitality. It's always the same situation we have met, like before, with hospitality and very open activity from Ukrainian society and Ukrainian politicians.
Thank you very much. Probably Madame Elisabeth Guigou will say several words about her understanding of this visit.
Well, I am in complete accordance with what my colleagues have said. What we want to express here is that through our three persons, there is a unanimity at the moment inside the European Union as far as the attitude towards Ukraine and the question, of course, of Donbass is concerned. It's very important to keep this unanimity, and of course to have both assurance that the process of reform gets along sufficiently well. We are very aware that the Ukrainian people have concentrated a lot of efforts on the economic and social situation. It is recovering, and we are very happy about that. There are other reforms to be implemented, especially the judiciary reform, which is absolutely crucial, and not only pro forma by writing laws, but by implementing the independence, real independence of the judiciary. That's one first very important proof to be given. And the second one, of course, is the implementation of the Minsk agreement, because we can see no escape from that if really we want to have peace in the region. And so that's what we have come to say. We are very aware that things are very difficult. We are in parliaments as well. We very well know that there are very often hidden agendas, that it's very difficult to get unanimity and to get majority on those very difficult reforms. But it's very important that Ukraine shows that Ukraine is not satisfied with the status quo, and that the status quo is very dangerous indeed, as the death of 3 Ukrainian soldiers only yesterday showed, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Шановні колеги, журналісти, якщо в когось є запитання, будь ласка, піднімайте руку, представте.
Please ask your questions. Introduce yourself first. Valentina Железняк, 120 channel. I have a question to the speakers and about Minsk agreements, that they are in delay. The implementation is in delay.
You're right. The implementation is in delay, and this was one topic of our talks we have had today and will have today. And of course, it is clearly that Russia has not so far fulfilled the requirements which are clearly written down in the Minsk agreement, and it is on them to withdraw heavy weapons, to demilitarize the region, and to simply do what they have promised to do in this agreement. So this is a clear statement that there is a lack of Russian fulfillment to its own obligations which Russia has signed to fulfill. On the other side, of course, we have made clear that Ukraine should not choose a position simply to wait for Russia to fulfill the requirements, but Ukraine should be active. Ukraine should demonstrate and give proof that Ukraine is ready to fulfill the requirements, to prepare the legislation, which includes particularly to pass a new electoral bill, which provides the legal ground for conducting elections in the regions of East Ukraine. So I think it is very important that Ukraine makes clear beyond any doubt, we are ready to fulfill, we are ready to deliver, and it is on the other side now to also fulfill the requirements. Don't wait for Russian fulfillment of the requirements, but be active and destroy any doubt that there is a lack of readiness on both sides. This seems a very important message we tried to convey this day.
Дякую. Можна невеличке уточнення з приводу виборів?
So about the elections in Donbas. About elections in Donbas, you said that Ukraine should adopt bills, and when it should be conducted? Should we wait for demining, for clearance of the territory? When should it be conducted?
My view is that Ukraine should make a difference between passing a law, a bill, and conducting elections. And I think Ukraine should start to pass a bill, this which would create the legal ground for having elections, and it would simultaneously demonstrate the will, the Ukrainian will, to make elections possible. And then the elections itself are a different case. For having elections, you have to ensure, of course, the circumstances, that there is a peaceful environment, that citizens can go to the ballot box without any threats to cast their votes. So I think these are two steps. The first step, but in any case, the first step has to be taken yet. This is past the bill, and this could and should be done by the Ukrainian parliament and politics.
A couple of words. if it's possible. We talk about it, and it was the maybe not main, but important issue of our discussion with Ms. Hanna Hopko, the Chief of Committee of Foreign Affairs. And we talk about it, and from our side, I mean European side, the experienced countries, European experienced countries in as Poland is in such type relations with Russia before. So it's important to be ready for elections, as Norbert Röttgen said, but to arrange agreement between Ukrainian parties in the Ukrainian parliament, in Rada Najwyższa, Верховна Rada, is the key issue, to have a common view about this situation and arrange the common conclusions. It's the first step. The second one is for sure the situation in Donbass, about ceasefire, about the situation, about SCE mission and all this stuff. But the first step, it's agreement between Ukraine's party and just to common opinion about it.
Thank you. Meanwhile, we have a question from Kyiv Post Journal. Here in Kyiv, European Commission recommended to introduce visa-free regime for Ukraine. At the same time, there are concerns that this move would provoke mass migration of Ukrainians to the Schengen zone countries. The question is, do you think these fears are reasonable, and to what extent, and what can be a possible solution?
Well, before answering this question, I just want to come back to the implementation of the Minsk Agreement. Of course, we discussed in details the question of the electoral law, but we must not forget that there should be a constitutional reform as well. And as far as the status of Donbass is concerned, we know it's very difficult to get a majority for a second reading in the Rada. But let us not imagine, and it's not in the interest of Ukraine, to think that these reforms might be postponed or even deleted for a very long time. On the question of the general prosecutor, it's in my view a very important question, because there have to be evidence that the will is there at the highest level in government in Ukraine, that the will is there to push an end to corruption, and therefore to give evidence to the Ukrainian people that there is a will of transparency, on the independence of judiciary. And of course, it's a very significant and symbolic decision that has to be taken. Will it be, on the question of visa, it's always a fear, of course. It's understandable. But the question is whether Ukraine can satisfy the requirements of the European Union on really implementing reforms and fight against corruption. And unless evidence is given on that, and in my view, there are quite, other reforms to be passed, then it will remain a difficult question.
For us, it's very important, this signal from the European Commission, just to be open. The visa-free regime, it's a signal to Ukraine, to Ukraine's society, that Europe is open about the Ukrainians, and this path to European Union is also open. For sure, it's a long way in front of Ukrainians, but the key issue is to be on the good track, and in my opinion, it's such type of the signals. We don't afraid about Ukrainian migration. We have really excellent relations in Poland, for sure. It's the best example which about many Ukrainians are working, studying, learning in Poland, and everything is perfect. So in my opinion, it's like a type of challenge for Ukraine and for Europe for sure. But the signal is very, very positive and perspective.
Thank you. We still have 5 minutes left, so we have time for 2 short questions. Be laconic, please.
Шевченко Олег, інформагентство.
Shevchenko Oleg, Informa Agency. Why European diplomats are saying that they do not recognize the occupation of Crimea, but at the same time Crimean issue is not on the agenda like ceasefire in Donbass? Do you think of potential inclusion of Crimea into Minsk agreements?
Certainly do not forget Crimea. The situation that has been created there is, of course, and we always remind that to our Russian in our meetings with our Russian interlocutors. It's just not acceptable. It's a breach, main breach on very fundamental international principles that have been respected by everyone, every country, since the Second World War. And therefore, it's of course a crucial question between Ukraine and Russia, but it cannot be. We cannot be in the international community. We should not be indifferent to that, and there's no question that we should forget Crimea.
I want to briefly underline this position. The legal position of the European Union is absolutely clear. We consider this to be a fundamental violation of international law, the annexation of Crimea. It is on the agenda. It is not forgotten. It is mentioned and there. And thirdly, we are trying to conduct an incremental process, so a step-by-step process. And we start, of course, with, which is problematic enough to achieve progress in the East Ukraine, and this does not mean and imply that Crimea is forgotten.
We have the same opinion about it. It's no doubt about it. The situation from Crimea, it's broke of the international law. We agreed in 100%, and it's the key issue and the real reason for the sanctions, EU sanctions. The most radical weapon as we used before. Yeah? So it's and Russia knows about it.
Thank you very much for your responses. Unfortunately, we have no more time to have any other questions. На жаль, шановні журналісти, вже немає часу для запитань. Дуже дякуємо за увагу. Український кризовий медіа-центр завершено сьогодні.
Ukrainian Crisis Media Center ends the briefing and working day.